Wouldn't you love to create your own personal oasis? What is an oasis, you ask? An oasis is something that provides refuge, relief, or a pleasant contrast, and that is exactly what you will find at AJO Consulting Services, LLC. AJO Consulting Services is a company that provides individuals, communities, and businesses of color with coaching and consulting services, personal and professional development, as well as social and community connection services. These services include, but are not limited to, dating, life, relationship, and business coaching, finance management, travel experience curation, wellness navigation, and much more. Are you ready to find, connect, and release? Come experience your oasis today. Visit our website to learn more at www.ajoconsultingservices.com. Follow us on Facebook at AJO Consulting and Instagram at AJO Consult. Also, email us at info@ajoconsultingservices.com. Hey everyone, welcome to the Oasis podcast. I'm your host, Miss AJ. Thanks for tuning in. An oasis is something that provides refuge, relief, or a pleasant contrast, and that is exactly what you will find tuning into the Oasis podcast. This is a space where I and special guests will be cultivating intentional and honest conversations about life's journey. Subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts and watch us on YouTube now. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Oasis podcast. Thank you for joining us again. Here on the episode with us is Mac, the travel guy. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
Doing good. So today we are not talking about travel.
No, not
Nope.
exactly.
So on the previous episode, we were talking about traveling and vacations and just, tips and tools and things of that nature. And you mentioned, bringing someone home to meet your parents as like a prereq in some ways before you kind of get to know them and possibly travel with them. And I was intrigued, of course. And then we had to do an episode about it. So here we are. So we're going to be talking about meeting the parents, right? And I would love the perspective of a man when it comes to this, because I feel like I don't hear men talk about this a lot. So I definitely would love to hear your thoughts and your thought process about it all and your experiences with it as well.
I'll be glad to share some insight.
All right. So you meet a young lady. You are feeling her for the most part. Like, okay, so far, so good.
Mm-hmm.
What is the timestamp that's needed before you say, hey, I'm going to bring her home?
There are a few things that go into this, but if we can backtrack a second, because it was something very specific that you said in a previous episode that we did. That was, you felt as though you need to take a trip with your significant other within a defined period of time. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say that was like within like 6 months?
I definitely said within the first 6 months. Yep.
Within the first 6 months. Okay. So that kind of sparked the idea in my head. Well, wait a minute. Before I start spending money on taking these trips, I need to find out if this person is actually worthy, of that time and energy and effort, right? And of course, money, right? So with that being said, keeping the 6 month, rule in mind, I tend to try to get them to, meet my folks, within that first 6 months. And my reasoning and logic behind that is because I have not been the best judge of character.
Okay.
in some cases.
Okay. Before we dive into that, some clarity. The traveling within this first 6 months, again, that is a prereq for me. Okay. And I understand what you're saying about before jumping in and spending the money, but that travel, we are going Dutch. Okay. I'm 100% okay with that. All right. I don't go nowhere if I ain't got my own money. So I am okay with that. And again, actually, even in the planning of this little getaway, you also learn a lot about this individual as well, right?
True.
Like what their thought process is, how organized they are, what they're, how they might be handling their finances. Now, if the person offers to pay, okay, that's fine. However, that is not what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting that And again, I don't take these extravagant trips within the first, 6 months. It's very, localish, quick, easy, nothing that, you got to make it rain. We're not doing none of that because, like I said, if I need to run, I'm going to run. I want it to be easy and quick.
Right.
I don't want to feel like I owe nobody nothing. Okay. And that's just what that is. So I just want to clarify that piece. But now let's get back to what you mentioned about you feel that bringing someone home gives you more insight because you feel yourself that you haven't been thus far a good judge of character. Now, let's talk about that. Why do you feel that's the case?
I feel that's the case, as with anything, everybody's a visual creature, of habit, right? I know there's been multiple discussions about men are visual and women aren't and all this other stuff. But the fact of the matter is we're all equally, I think, visual people. So I'm attracted to certain things. I like a certain type of look and I typically go for that. Now, in my cases, that hasn't always panned out to be the best approach to things. So, you find somebody physically attractive and then, you start getting involved and you start realizing that, hey, people aren't as tight as you would think they are. So yeah, my logic for bringing people around my family is that because they look at people from a different perspective than I do. So for instance, I hate to admit it, but sometimes my mom will be right. She's like, nah, that ain't that ain't the one. That ain't it. Or cousins, my cousins, especially my female cousins that I revere as like, my sisters, because I have that type of close family network. They're very good at be like, nah, that ain't who you want, So yeah.
Okay, so in the past, what do you feel your, I guess, parents or, I mean, you mentioned mom, you didn't mention dad. So like,
yeah.
But we'll talk about that. But what do you feel that they have seen that you haven't seen?
I think, your parents, or whomever your legal guardian was, right? People that grew up with you and raised you, they know certain things about you that you may not recognize, yourself per se, right? So, my folks, they know I love to travel, right? And I've had several of my cousins, female cousins, like, hey, you like to travel, you need to get you somebody that likes to travel, right? Not those that see that you like to travel and trying to latch on to that and get those free rides, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so that has happened to me once before. I hate to admit that, I got suckered, but I did. I fell for somebody that, I thought was there for me, but they were only there for something that I was able to provide them with.
Before I even get to that point, I just want to throw in there, you're actually not the first man that I've heard say this, right? Like, yeah, I start talking to somebody, like I need to have them meet my family ASAP. I don't know about you, but growing up for me, you didn't just let anybody meet your family, right? Like it was one of those, like, you meet family, it's serious. You know what I'm saying? And that always stuck with me about like, I'm not letting any Tom, Dick, or Harry come and meet my mom or meet my, my nephews and my siblings because I like this person for real, right? I don't know what I want with this person, or I was young. I'm not thinking about, down the road or the future. So for me, whenever I did bring someone home, or at least for a majority of my life, I mean, I think I might have kind of softened up on it a little bit as I got into my 30s, but I was like, okay, me and this person already been together. I feel like there's, possible potential here, or I really like this person, or I really love them. It's one of those things, right? Mm-hmm. Or if not a combination of those things. So I'm just like, okay, now you can meet my family. Then I can see, how you mesh and all that other stuff. I think as I've gotten older, I realized, or I also have heard that more men have been willing to and like open to like, oh, I want you to meet my family. I want you to meet my parents. And then in my mind, I'm going, whoa, this is quick. What's happening? Like, I just met you. You just met me. I'm okay. You want to bring me home? Bruh, that's your business. Okay, sure, fine. But for me, I just I'm a little slower moving when it comes to that, because of that notion of you only bring someone home when it's serious. I do understand the mindset though. I understand that your parents or your family, your guardians, your cousins, even those who you have been raised with, they definitely see different things than you see, right? Like in the other person, because you might be like starstruck or whatever based off of whatever you're liking about that person, but also they know things about you that they can automatically go, that they are not compatible. That ain't gonna work. But I guess my follow-up question is, do you always heed their warnings?
So in the beginning, no. I'll be, moms would say something like, mom, you don't know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. She's not like that, but as I've gotten older and as I say more wiser, I tend to, take heed to those messages, a lot sooner, and even just some stuff that happens in the universe, right? Just some things that come about and you're like, all right, I can kind of, as they say, discernment, right? You see things and you feel things, you're like, okay, now I see what they're talking about. All right. So this right here isn't gonna work. But yeah, in the very beginning, no, but today, 2022, absolutely.
All right. So how soon you meet her till she meets the parents?
I mean, I'm not talking about I just meet her today and then we going home tomorrow, no, but I think for me, like before, and again, and that was a great clarification that you made earlier in terms of, going Dutch and who's paying for what, but we're both avid travelers. So, again, for me, before I take like those kind of trips, I think it's just a little bit more imperative to me that, before I start kind of investing that kind of, time, energy, and money into something that, let me get a second, as they say, a second opinion on something first, before I start doing that. Because for me, I guess I'm the type of dater that, like, if I'm doing something, like we doing something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like an every time thing, but you talk about traveling and taking trips. That's something that I think, okay, well, if I'm going on a trip, I'll extend the invite to you, one, just being courteous, and two, because, I really would like for you to, accompany me, on this trip, on this journey.
Well, I wish more guys were like you, because that don't be the case. But I definitely understand what you're saying. Like, before you start to really invest, you want to get that second look, that second opinion. So what happens though if you really are feeling this person and they haven't shown you any red flags that you're ignoring, right? But family, friends, whomever that you value their opinion, it's like, something about her just is not, she didn't do anything outward, but they're just having a feeling. What do you do? Do you just like, all right, boom, it's done, you cutting off at the neck? Or
I mean, it's one of those catch-22 situations, right? Because I do take, what they say seriously, right? Or value, my family's opinions on things, but not so much so to the point, okay, well, someone said this without actually meeting the person or spending some time around this person, that I'm just gonna be like, okay, yeah, I'm done. If they haven't done anything, overtly, to make you think that, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be over, but it would be something that, that I myself might be like, I didn't notice that before, maybe take a second, maybe myself take a second look at that. All right, see how this person reacts to, this type of situation.
Okay, I do have a follow-up question for that, but I want to add, I mean, for me, I don't know if this is a long time or not, but for me, it's very rare. I think I did it one time, and that whole relationship was just me doing things I didn't normally do. It didn't work out, but but I tried it. Usually between 6 months plus, do I be like, okay, I'm gonna let you meet somebody, right? And by somebody, meaning you probably meet my cousin, you know what I'm saying? More than likely, you probably meet my cousin, because a lot of times she might be in my house or whatever. So she's one of those like everyday kind of people that I hang with family-wise, right? Then the upgrade of that is like, all right, you can meet my sister. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, if I let you meet my sister, that means, we're spending enough time, and I want to see see if she vibes. And if my sister pretty much can vibe with pretty much anybody. So if she can't vibe with you, then that's a problem, right? Then I think that's when I need a little more time under my belt maybe reaching probably the 8-month mark, 8 months a year, that's when I'm kind of like, all right, you can meet, you know, my brother, or you can meet my nephews, and you can meet my mom. I take a bit of time. And for me, I think it's the opposite. I think I need to gauge one, if I even like you enough to keep you around. That's one, for to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. That's that.
Yeah.
And then I think about okay, how does the family mesh and vibe? Now, I know that might be troublesome, simply because if you like the person, but your family don't mesh with them, or they don't mesh with your family dynamic, that does put you in a tough spot. It does. Becoming older now, like, I understand that now in hindsight, how like, ooh, some situations that could have gone ugly, thank gosh it didn't. But then I had situations where I did that and they did not mesh with my family at all. And I was kind of like, it was always this weird, awkward, if they were around with my family, it's always like, oh God, like I have to like ping pong in between and like create that bridge consistently. And that was exhausting.
It's a lot of work.
It is.
It's a lot of work. And so, you know, again, that's why I think, you know, I tend to do that, you know, early on, you know, because if you can manage, it's kind of like that sink or swim kind of thing, right? You know, if you can manage, you know, to navigate, you know, our family, because we're very, you know, lively, you know, bunch of people, you know. So, you know, cheat code for anybody that watches this episode, you know, that you know, wants to shoot their shot at me. Here. My family it don't be quiet. That's all I can tell you. You know, the minute they sense that you clam up, and I'm telling you, they like sharks. You know, they gonna pounce on you. You know, because they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this person, yeah, they can't hang, they can't this, they can't that. You know, and so yeah, we're very, you know, lively, you know, bunch. So they start asking questions and start talking and engaging. And I know some people, you know, will shy away because, you know, they're in unfamiliar territory. But that's like my family's way of seeing it, you know, if you can hold your weight. So, you know, yeah, you start shutting down, they like, nah, she not for the strong.
But, you know, honestly, as full as personality as I am, as much, you know, as talking that I do, because I have a podcast, I am not like that, like in like real life. Like, I take time to observe before I jump in. So, I mean, that may not necessarily be a fair assessment. You know what I mean? Like, you might need to give somebody, I think the first meeting, you don't have to be, you know, the center of attention and jumping in and hugging everybody and all that. I think by the, like, you know, second, third one, like, that's when I think, you know, that's when I think, one, my family would get a better, be able to do a better assessment. But then also my partner will also get to see, you know, really a little bit more about how my family actually functions based outside of what I've probably told them or what they saw that first time, right? It's like that first time we grown. It's like that first time you had sex with somebody, right? Like, you can't base your future sexual experience off of that one time, right? Because it's awkward. It's awkward. Well, why not? You don't know.
Well, what if it's great?
Okay.
Well, all right, then you should be able to.
Well, most oftentimes, for me, it's rare. No, I mean, let me not say that. It's probably once or twice. Yeah, like, oh, all right. But most of the time, it's been like, oh, this was a little weird. It's a little weird. Not terrible, but it was awkward. It was just like strange because it's a person you never been with. They don't know what you like. You don't know what they like. Okay. I feel like it's much the same when you're meeting somebody for the first time and you're meeting your intimate, close circle. It's like, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be weird. I know I can joke with you like this, but I don't know if they're going to be cool with these, you know, perverted jokes that I say, right? I know that I can jump from A to B to C to D and you keep up with me, but that doesn't mean that they can, right? So you're kind of like in your head a little bit when it comes to certain things. So I don't know if that's like a fair assessment the first time. Because I know for me, probably honestly, the first couple times, I'm going to be like, right? I'll smile and I'll laugh. And if you start conversation, I will definitely continue it. But I'm not coming there like, hey, everybody, you gonna get that side of me for sure. No. But it doesn't happen right away. I need to feel comfort. I need to feel ease. I need to feel safe. You know what I mean? I need to feel a level of safety.
Now, what I would, and I'm glad you brought that point up, because I want the listeners to know that I won't sneak attack you, if that makes sense. Like, it's not gonna be like a surprise thing. Like, trust me, when it does happen, it'll be like, hey, listen, got this family function going on over here. We having a cookout, you know, da da da. Folks gonna be there. It's come through. Have a good time. So let me just clarify that it's not like a sit down. We're eating fine 5-course meal dining, and this is like this interview type thing. Typically it's going to be like a party type atmosphere, but I always give the women that I have dated, that I have brought home, kind of a heads up, just like I said before. I tell them, hey, most I can tell you, man, hey, just come in there, be yourself, don't be quiet. And it's so crazy because I get what you're saying, right? The first time, because I'm like that too. Some people call me a chatterbox. I'm a people person. I love to engage in conversation with different people. But there have been, on occasion, some of the women that I've dated, I've met their family, and then she's kind of reported back to me like, they said, yeah, you was awfully quiet. You really have much to say. It was kind of one of those, I'm just kind of observing, getting a feel, vibe for the room kind of thing, and then, make my way through. So yeah, but I just don't throw them into the shark tank and be like, fend for yourself. I always give them, a heads up.
Nah, some people do that for sure. They do that. And don't do me like that. Don't ever do me like that. I don't like that. But for me, I always give warning. I always like say, hey, this person is like this. They're gonna be all in your business. This person, they cool. You can laugh and vibe with them. So I kind of give them a run through of everybody, but it's not like overly too much information. But because you want them to get their own, feel of the person. But just give them a little, a little something. Earlier you mentioned, your cousins and your mom. So what about your dad? How does he assess people for you?
Oh, my dad. I get it from, I am my father's son, so by that, we're just very, visual people, I mean, yeah, we want somebody that's going to treat us well and treat us right, not to say that he wasn't a good judge of character, but sometimes, those traits, as they say, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So, I like I said, I have on occasion, just kind of not been, the best judge of character when it comes to things. So, my dad, as I've gotten older, he just wants to make sure, hey, is the woman going to treat you right? As long as she's treating you right and you feel happy and respected, in the relationship, hey, things should be good, But I shout out to my pops. He's dropped some jewels, some wisdom, on a brother that I didn't take heed to at first in the very beginning, and I was like, dang, pops is right about this one. I'm very fortunate and thankful that I have both mother and father, that I can look to, for advice on different things and how to navigate those waters.
Absolutely. I definitely think that that's a blessing just to even have that, right? They can give you the thoughts, whether you want to listen to them or not, but for them to give you that knowledge, they have that insight, they have that foresight at times too. Sometimes the mom they just be knowing, you know what I mean? And that's a blessing. That is really, really, really a blessing for sure. So I want to ask you, have you ever had the opposite happen? Meaning, you wasn't really sure about the person, but y'all have enough in common, you know what I mean? And you bring them home and everyone is like, I love this person. Does that change the course of the relationship for you? Has that happened for you before?
Yes, that has happened to me before.
Writing Our Own Stories Incorporated is an organization that embraces and uplifts authors of color and equips them with the tools and resources to write their stories. Writing Our Own Stories Incorporated provides seminars, workshops, and a collaborative writing group setting where authors can feel free to write. We believe in the transformative power of storytelling, and we will continue to make space for all stories to be told. Writing Our Own Stories Incorporated provides a safe and welcoming space for all aspiring authors to tell their story. If you're interested in joining our writing group or learning more about our organization, check out our website at www.writingourownstoriesinc.org. That's www.writingourownstoriesinc.org. And make sure and follow us on IG and Facebook at writing our own stories. Writing Our Own Stories, Inc. has released its debut book, For Black Women, by Black Women, an anthology of lessons learned. This debut anthology is a love letter to Black women and for everyone who loves, knows, or wants to support Black women. Purchase your copy of the anthology at www.writingourownstories.inc.org. Again, that's www.writingourownstories.inc.org.
I want to say it was both the best and worst relationship, that I've had, right? I kind of had the gift and the curse because everybody loved it. It's like, oh my God, she's perfect. She's this, she's that. You guys she likes to do things, you do things, blah, 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 blah. But there were some things internally, that she was dealing with that just made the relationship, somewhat like hell. And there wasn't anything that I, that I could really do, because she was just dumping a lot of that, onto my plate. There was stuff that she needed to work out. So yes, while it was good on one end, it was bad. It was bad on the other.
So do you think there is such a thing as bringing too many people home to meet the family?
Yes and no. I've picked up the no one knows who I'm bringing home next, right? So at the next family function, somebody's like, "Oh, so who you bringing next?" They never know, and not that that's necessarily a good thing, but it's just funny because I have some relatives that I'll talk to on the phone or whatever, and I may have a female friend in earshot or nearby, but they won't say names. They'd be like, "Oh, tell, the young lady I said hello," and then I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's so and so, blah blah blah," and so yeah, it happens like that. People come to we never know who I'm bringing home next. I just haven't found the one yet.
And it's hard out here. It's hard out here. There's pee in the pool. Okay. But anyway.
Yeah. It's a lot more. It's a lot more than just that. But yeah.
It's a swamp, not a pool. But I don't know. I feel like for me, again, going back to that, growing up, not only were, being told, you only bring someone home when you're serious, but also I feel like as a woman, you also can't bring too many people home, right? Because of course, in their mind, they're thinking, "Oh, you just dating around, you're doing too much, you out here in these streets," which is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to find out what you like. Okay, we got to stop shaming us women. But anyway, back to the conversation. But just that feeling of like, oh man, like, is this one too many people I'm bringing home, right? Because like on what you're saying is like, it's important to bring people home because you're just gonna get some information you might not have gotten. You also want to make sure that the person vibes. But I feel on the other hand, at least for me and my thought process, it's like, damn, I can't keep bringing people home, right? Because like what you said, they're going to be like, "Oh, who you bringing to this function to this guy?" You know what I'm saying? And that used to weigh on me a lot, to be honest. Like, it used to make me feel away. But now I've gotten to the point, it was like, man, fuck that. If I'm vibing with the person, I care about the person, I want the people I care about to meet this person, and I want you guys to have a relationship. If it lasts, it lasts. If it don't, oh well, move on. You know what I mean? And that's how I am now. But that wasn't always my train of thought before. I used to be very like, "Oh no, I can't bring him home. Oh my God, I'm gonna bring somebody else home." Mind you, I've been with this person X amount of years. Shit don't work out sometimes. That's just what it is. You know what I mean? But do you feel that there is that idea of like way too much to bring someone home? And also, do you think there's a difference when it comes to men versus women?
Absolutely. There is a difference, and I think you hit the nail on the head, which is that most people believe, the notion is, you out here in these streets, right? You, as they would say, you sexing on all these men's, all these people in your bed. And whereas, for a guy, it's kind of one of those, right on, brother, do you do your thing, and yeah. So to that, again, as I said before, I just don't bring, any and everybody home, because I think you know whether this is going to be like, a 1-2 date kind of thing, or, maybe lead to something potentially long term. So yeah, there's a difference there, a stereotypical difference. But I honestly, I think in today's day and age, I don't think that the stigma is there as much as it used to be. But then again, I could be wrong, because I'm looking at it through my lens, as a man, as a male, where it comes across as you should be doing that in your prime. But now, what I will say real quick, I came from my family reunion down to Charlotte, a few weeks back, and I had the pleasure of chauffeuring around some of my female cousins. Right, we were all going out for a night out in the town. And they must have forgot that I was in the car, that I was driving, because then they got to having y'all little girl talk. And it was something, and I'm just sitting there, I'm just listening, I'm like, wow, this gives me a whole new perspective on things. And we're sitting at a stoplight, and one of my younger cousins in the back said something, and I just turned around, I said, and they said, oh my God, we forgot you was, we back here. Yeah, they just, and I'm like, wow, okay. So yeah, times have changed. I'll say that, and it's okay. It's just like you said, these are your formative years, finding out what you like, what you don't like, and that's what you have to do. You get to a certain point in life where you know for a fact, okay, well listen, I can go for this, and I'm definitely not going to go for that. And then you find that happy medium. So yeah.
I want to ask, because this wasn't part of the conversation, but you know how my brain works. We are getting older, you know what I'm saying? We are getting refined. And there are some societal expectations that are, put on when you get to a certain age, and, the expectations of certain things. Now, when it comes to family for you, right, you are getting older and you're bringing people home. Does the conversation change for you? Meaning, are they like, hey, you trying to have, get married? Hey, are you trying to, start a family with this one? Have you found that the conversation has shifted, and have they gotten more stringent with what they're saying you should look for, or have they gotten more lax with it?
It depends, on who I'm talking to. It's not necessarily. I mean, the notion has always been there, get married, had kids and whatnot. As I look to it, my circle, my brothers, and by my brothers, I mean, friends that have just become my brothers, since high school. I'm like the odd man out. Everybody else, they got kids, or, they married with kids, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like the lone bachelor out here. No kids, not currently, in a relationship, kind of thing. And I think for me, honestly, I'm not going to say that it bothers me, but I look at it like, damn, shit, I'm almost 40 years old. You're three years away from being 40, right? And it's like, you don't think about the stuff, because early on in growing up, it's always preached to you, hey, go to school, get a job, live life, don't be out here in the streets, having kids 18, 19, 20, et cetera, right? And now you're on the back end of it, and you're like, damn, I don't want to be the 50-year-old that shows up with, my 5-year-old. Yeah, right? You know what I mean? The 5-year-old kid in kindergarten, and then, and you like, everybody else's kids is grown and basically, out the house, and here it is, like I'm just now starting. But, on the flip side of the coin, everybody has to run their own race, right? So, what's meant to be, will be, and it will happen, at its time. Because thank God I ain't had no kids with some of the other ones that I
Can we say that again? Say it louder.
For the people in the back. Yeah, I'm trying to tell you. So I look at some of those, as a blessing in disguise. As much as I may want and ultimately desire that, I just know that it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. So
absolutely. I mean, for me, again, it could be a cultural thing. I know it's an age thing, especially for my culture and my mom specifically, of like now, getting there, crossing that threshold of, going into the late 30s. And it's like, oh, you ain't got no kids. You ain't got to, you're not married. And it's more for me. I feel like the requirements are so much more relaxed now. And I feel away. Wait a minute. Like, my expectations have not diminished. Matter of fact, I think they've gotten higher. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they've gone up. And when I was younger, I didn't know what I want. I didn't know really who I was. Ain't nobody was thinking about all these things. Because exactly like what you said, it was, you can't even look at boys. Like, you couldn't even think about that. Don't think about that. You're going to school, get yourself together, figure that stuff out. And then it just magically, you turn the age and they're like, but where your husband and your baby at? You're like, wait a minute. I thought I was supposed to be focused on school, And so for a majority, honestly, of my adulthood, I've been focused on career. I've been focused on getting myself together. And I mean, for me, thank God, there's also for me been a focus on who the hell am I, right? Like, who am I? What do I actually want? Who am I as an individual, not as a member of my family, not as a part of a unit, but who am I as an individual? So that takes time. You know what I mean? Like, that takes time to figure all that stuff out. And I think that's also the reason why my requirement has gone up. But I'm also finding that, like, my mother or the older members of my family are kind of just like, you don't just want to just find a nice guy and marry. Nice ain't enough. What you mean?
That's not enough.
Nice guys out here. But do I want to procreate with him? No. I have things that I need. I have things that I require. You know what I mean? Because I know me now. There's things I just won't deal with that I did in my 20s. There's just things I won't deal with that I did last year. You know what I mean? Let alone in my 20s, which was, at this point years ago. Like, I'm not fit to do it. But I've realized as I'm getting older, the requirements are getting less and less from, family members. And it's either one extreme, like completely just like, just meet a nice guy and then do what you got to do. Or it's, girl, don't do it.
Right.
Like, literally, don't get married, don't have kids. And these are the people who did it young. These are the people who did it without really knowing themselves. And now they're on the other end of it, of just like what you said, their kids are about to be grown, they're about to be at the house, they've been married, maybe they are getting divorced or are divorced. And now they're on the other end of it. They're like, I wish I didn't do it. You doing it the right way, or just don't do it. Completely just warning you, don't do it. And so I find that, like, it's a weird space to be in, right? Having your wants and what you would like to happen, but then having the people who are close to you kind of like, putting these messages in of like, they may be different of what you're actually looking for. So it's like, how do you balance it out, essentially?
That's a very good question and points, that you made. I won't say that I've gotten the other extreme, like the don't do it portions of it, and it brings me to, and it was a thought that came across my head when you said that, we have to look towards, if marriage and raising a family, is a goal of yours, or to anybody, listening and watching it, you have to look for those positive influences, right? Yeah, we all know, at 30 plus years old, we know that relationships aren't perfect. We know it's not all glitz and glam. You're going to have your bad days. But, I look to those people that have, been married 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and wonder, how they did it. I remember this one elder couple at church, that I had talked to some years ago, they said, yeah, we did it, they just did not argue. And it was a funny thing, because he basically said, whatever the wife said went, and then, we joked about it, and I was like, doesn't it seem kind of like pushover-ish, kind of thing? And he was like, no. He was like, you know what, peace in my home, is worth more than being who's right and who's wrong. Mm-hmm. Right. So, that was something that kind of always, stuck with me, like, I see his point, they're not arguing, over, frivolous stuff. I look towards those more so than I do the naysayers, because, and I'm not discrediting the naysayers, but typically in those instances, what I've come across or come to realize is that they knew that was a bad match to begin with.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for whatever reason, maybe optically, it looked good, and they roll with it,
Yeah. Agreed. But I mean, but when I agree, I agree with everything that you're saying. I think sometimes there is that level of difficulty when it's like overwhelmingly that's kind of what's being said or what's being seen, right? And so sometimes it may be difficult to think the opposite. And sometimes it's hard to find those positive examples, especially nowadays, right? Like it's difficult. I don't have a lot of people in my circles that are married. Like I have people in my family, but my actual peers, no. And so it's not like I can just go, hey, to so-and-so that I trust and I love, give me some pointers, or let me hang out with you and your wife, or whatever the case is, and figure out and see, how things are functioning. It's not that easy. And sometimes you have to go to different sources that are not connected to you. But when it's the sources that are close to you that are giving you the negatives, like it makes you go, pause a little bit, like, right? But at the same time, knowing also, well, you may not have made the best decision. There were other outside influences. There were other things, you know what I mean, that made you make the decision. But it's a difficult and weird space to be in, at least for me, I'm finding. But it is, I think, going back to the topic, it is a blessing, though, being able to have family and those that you love closest to you, those that know you the best, able to give you that bird's eye view about your, who you're dating and if you are making the right decisions. Granted, at the end of the day, you make the last decision, it's your call. But I think now more so than I have before, I do appreciate hearing what they have to say. And I do, meditate on it, right? As opposed to like when you were younger, it was like, I heard you, but whatever. Now it's like, I'm gonna listen to that. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna just toss it to the side. I'm going to listen to it. But I think also, like what you said, having discernment and the universe does speak to you. A lot of times when you do hear something now, it kind of affirms something you've already been thinking. It kind of gives you that, okay. Like I was thinking that too. Like, oh, I was feeling that too. And I think as we're older now, we're able to actually listen to the external, but the internal as well.
Right.
For sure. All right, Matt. Well, thank you for having this conversation with me. I know, talking about these things ain't necessarily a regular thing that we do. I don't know about your guy friends, but definitely in our peer-to-peer relationships, a lot of times, we keep things cute, we keep things fun, and we don't really like dive deep into like these important things that we're all experiencing at some point or another. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that with me. So tell the listeners where they can find you on social media.
All right. Once again, always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on to express my views and opinions, which aren't necessarily those of disclaimer, right? You gotta throw that out there, right? You can find me on social media, Instagram, YouTube, and now TikTok at Mac the Travel Guy.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. Hope to see you again soon.
Likewise.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Oasis podcast. I hope you were able to find something that resonated with you on your journey. Don't forget to subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and YouTube. Rate us and leave us a review and comment on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and YouTube. Share your favorite episode and like us on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, want to be a guest, or any show ideas, contact us at ajaysoasis@gmail.com. That's AAYJAYSOASIS@gmail.com, or direct message us on Instagram and Facebook.